You know, this whole idea of liquids and density, solute density, a solute is something that's in a solution. Solute density in terms of nutrition is a good thing, but solute density in terms of sugar is a very, 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 very bad thing. And that brings me to our topic, which is the idea of this triangle of disease, and specifically of the second point of the triangle of disease. The bright side philosophy is the idea that the body heals itself. That's really the fundamental idea, that the body heals itself. The body regenerates itself. And if it's not healing and it's not regenerating, if you're dealing with a degenerative disease, if you're dealing with a degenerative disease, then you've either done something to muck things up, basically crappy food. It could be crappy thinking and crappy emotions too, but crappy food for our purposes here today. We're mucking things up, and we're not getting in the raw materials, the oxygen, the water, the mighty 90, which is the Healthy Start Pack from Longevity, all 90 essential nutrients, as well as phytonutrients and plant nutrients. So if you have something degenerating, a degenerative disease, then we've done something to muck it up, or we're missing something. And this leads to what I call the triangle of disease. It starts off with the digestive system, which we've been talking about for the last week or so. We talk about it all the time, actually. And then now we're on the second point of the triangle, which is the blood sugar system. It is a quick hop from the digestive tract to the blood sugar system, from digestive breakdown to the blood sugar system. More and more researchers are beginning to recognize this link, but it's just common sense, really. But more and more scientific studies are coming out talking about something called endotoxemia and diabetes, endotoxemia and insulin resistance. Endotoxemia means toxins inside, endo inside, toxemia in the blood, actually, inside the blood. Endotoxemia is a condition where toxins get secreted from bacteria in the gut. And when the gut bacteria start to become broken down and the proportions of the different bacteria start to change, and you get into bad proportions and you get into higher amounts of these bad bacteria, you go into something called endotoxemia, which is secretions that these bacteria produce that are poisonous. And endotoxemia is now being associated with diabetes. But there's other reasons why the digestive tract, why there's an important digestive link to blood sugar issues. Both the digestive system and the blood sugar system are energy systems. The digestive system is extracting energy from food, and the blood sugar system is controlling energy for the body, basically for the brain. So they're kind of similar anyway, for a lot of reasons. And on top of everything else, the pancreas is both a digestive organ, maybe the most important digestive organ. The pancreas is like the Mr. Cellophane of the organs in the body. You don't really hear too much about the pancreas, but pancreatic cancer will kill you very, very quickly, and there's a reason for that, because the pancreas is super duper important. It's a digestive structure and a blood sugar structure. So again, you can see blood sugar and the digestive system go together. So if you have a blood sugar problem, the odds are pretty darn good that you're going to have, that you've had a digestive problem that preceded it. Thus the idea of the triangle, the idea of one thing leading to another, leading to another. We'll talk about the third point here in a minute. So anyway, the more diabetes, first of all, is a blood sugar issue, and because it's a blood sugar issue, it means it's a food issue, largely. And there's other reasons why blood sugar will fluctuate. Mental reasons can do it, but for the most part, the biggest reason why blood sugar fluctuates is through food. So diabetes and blood sugar issues, I'm sorry to say, are food issues. And I'm sorry to say it because it means we're complicit. Nobody's forcing us to eat foods. And that's why when Dr. Wallach went around saying he could reverse diabetes, he was right, because it's a food issue. It's a choice issue. You just change your choices, you change your foods, and your blood sugar will change. And you know how long it'll take? About a minute. As soon as you decide, as soon as you stop putting the stuff in that changes your blood sugar around, it'll start to change. It's just common sense. So anyway, reducing your intake of sugar, controlling sugar, watching sugar, and being cognizant of something that helps the body handle sugar, and that's insulin. This whole idea of insulin and insulin resistance is really, really significant because insulin does a lot of things. You don't hear too much about insulin. You hear a lot about sugar, and sugar definitely is a problem. Sugar by itself is a problem. Sugar is explosive. I was just reading something cool about sugar here. You know, they actually got a plane to fly. I pulled this article and I can't find it now. I'll have to get it to you in our next break. It got a plane to fly just on oil, on cooking oil. And of course, cooking oil is a fat which is created from sugar, which is a very important point. In the body, sugar gets turned into fat via the hormone insulin. Insulin is super, super, super important stuff. Insulin is a growth substance. It helps the body grow. Insulin is involved in building muscle. Bodybuilders will use insulin. Farmers unscrupulously, or maybe perhaps legally, I don't even know, they'll give animals insulin to make them grow. Insulin is involved in helping nutrients get into cells, and one of the most important nutrients is going to be sugar. As we said yesterday, you do need to have a certain amount of sugar floating around in your blood. So anyway, insulin goes up as we eat sugar. The more sugar we eat, the more insulin we produce. Insulin is going to turn sugar to fat. Insulin is the body's way of protecting the body from sugar, as well as for saving the energy produced by sugar for a rainy day. All right, we'll continue this when we come back from our break. Farm Suspend, you're listening to The Bright Side. 855-660-4261 is our number. We'll be back after this. All right, we're back on The Bright Side. Thank you for being here. We're here Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific and 10 to 1 Central Time, and 24/7 on the archive page at brightsideben.com. You'll find a shopping cart up there with all the longevity products and a Join the Team link that you can click on. If you want to join the team and help spread the word about the power and the importance of a good nutritional supplement program, of understanding how the body works, that's what we're all about here on The Bright Side. And you can also always call the Bright Side Ben phone team, of course, at 866-735-2470. Okay, so insulin. You don't hear a lot about insulin. Insulin resistance is really the problem. What happens over time is the body stops listening to insulin. Except because insulin does so many different things, the body stops listening to insulin differently for different things. For example, the body will stop listening to insulin quicker when it comes to things like handling sugar than it will for things like handling blood pressure. So your blood pressure will continue to rise as your sugar control drops. Your body's ability to control sugar will be impacted much more than insulin's effect on blood pressure. So your blood pressure will continue to go up because insulin has an effect on blood pressure, but you're not going to handle sugar as well. And in response, your body will make more insulin to try to get it to handle sugar better, and your blood pressure will go up even more. And the same is true about weight gain. Weight gain continues to go up even though the body stops listening to insulin for sugar control. So the body response to insulin is different for all these different functions. Insulin also is responsible for helping, for increasing the amount of cholesterol your body produces. When your insulin goes up, you're going to make more cholesterol. So the good news is, simply by dropping your insulin, you will lose weight, your blood pressure will drop, and your cholesterol will drop like a stone. You'll think it's a miracle. My friend Ted at GCN, his cholesterol was in the 200s. I just tweaked his diet a little bit, had him stop eating the oatmeal and the carbohydrates, et cetera. Not only did every single marker of health improve, but specifically his cholesterol dropped like a stone, so much so that his doctor thought it was a miracle, which is what it looks like. And that is really, really good news, because elevated insulin, like blood sugar in the same fashion, is a choice matter. And this is why you can do such incredible things when you have diabetes that it's so tragic that we have so many diabetics and we have doctors, medical professionals putting people on drugs when it is not a drug issue and there's nothing drugs can do. And then you wonder, why is it that I'm on these drugs the rest of my life? And why is it that my blood pressure and all my markers are still elevated even though I'm on my glucophage? So, elevated insulin will ultimately shorten your life. In fact, every study that's ever been done on longevity, almost every study that's been done on longevity, somehow implicates insulin resistance, and blood sugar with mortality and with longevity. And this is such good news. This, to me, along with the whole digestive link, is so amazing because it means we have such power and such control over the state of our physical well-being. The lower you keep your insulin levels, the longer you're going to live, and the healthier you will be. One of insulin's effects is to make things grow, so cysts and fibroids. And cancer itself can be related to issues with blood sugar and with insulin. And it's not just insulin, it's sugar too. Sugar is highly explosive stuff. Sugar is high energy. Sugar loves to explode proteins. Bone proteins, skin proteins, organ proteins. Wherever you have proteins, sugar is going to attack. That's a famous, well-known chemical reaction. It's called glycation. And that's the chemical reaction that sugar has with protein. If you've ever browned anything in a pan, you've experienced this. If you crack an egg on a loaf of bread and stick it in the oven, the protein in the egg will react with the sugar in the flour of the bread, and you'll get a browning. And this glycation reaction is a browning reaction. It makes things brown, and we brown inside our bodies. Our bones brown. And that's one of the reasons why we get osteoporosis. Our bones are browning. Same with wrinkles. The collagen in our skin can brown. This glycation reaction is something that diabetics understand because they have to have glycated hemoglobin tests done on a regular basis. Glycation is this reaction that sugar has with hemoglobin in diabetics. At least that's one of the ways they measure glycation, or they assess general glycation. They extrapolate from whatever number they get from their hemoglobin test. So anyway, you eat lots of sugar, your insulin goes up. Eventually, your body stops listening to insulin. Eventually, actually, what's even worse is before your body stops listening to insulin, it gets really sensitive to insulin. Up until a certain threshold is reached, this is what hypoglycemia is. Hypoglycemia is a body that's becoming really crazy with its insulin sensitivity. For you guys who are out there and you experience hypoglycemia, or you've been told you've got hypoglycemia, what that basically means, you're either pre-diabetic or maybe even diabetic. Before insulin resistance occurs, insulin sensitivity tends to be really high. And you'll know you're hypoglycemic because you're not going to feel good in the brain. Remember, your brain is using most of the sugar. You're going to feel brain fog and fatigue. And most people won't let themselves get to that point. That's when you go get yourself a candy bar. And it may not even be close to that point, so you may not even know that that's what's occurring. But if you let it go long enough, you may go into hypoglycemia. And that's not a good feeling at all. So the way you want to handle this whole thing is you want to reset your body's sensitivity to sugar. That's the whole key here. Reset the sensitivity. How do you reset the sensitivity? Well, here, I'll give you a classic case in point. Did you ever stop eating sugar for like 2 or 3 days? You were out camping or wherever you were, you didn't have access to sugar. I know that's hard to believe these days, but say you were out in the woods somewhere. And then, or for whatever reason, you didn't have sugar, and then 3 days later, 4 days later, you have the same kind of sugary food that you had when you were eating sugar all the time. It's way, way, way intense. It's unpleasant. Now, you get used to it pretty quickly, but the first little bit of it is intense and unpleasant. That's because you've reset your body's sensitivity to sugar, and that's really what you're looking to do, is to hit the reset button. And how do you do that? The best way to do it by far, and the easiest way, the most willpower-free way to do it, is by upping your protein, and by upping your protein a lot. And then improving the body's ability to utilize protein. What you're looking to do is you want your body to be able to derive energy from protein. Protein is amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. And even though we all do, I can't say that we don't honor protein enough, or we don't honor it. We perhaps don't honor it enough. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back right after this. Don't go away. Back on the bright side. Thank you, friends, for joining us. 855-660-4261 is our number. If you want to learn more about the longevity products, head over to brightsideben.com or call the Brightside Ben phone team, 866-735-2470. All right, there's so much I want to talk about. You know, insulin, one of my favorite little reference books here is Insulin Treatment in Psychiatry. And this was a book that was published in 1950, and it's a bunch of papers that were written by various medical professionals who discuss how they use insulin for schizophrenia and for depression. And when you say why would insulin be used for schizophrenia and depression? Well, what does insulin do? It shuttles sugar out of the blood. Remember, sugar is super, super, super high energy, and many, at least it's thought that there's many psychiatric disorders are caused by sugar metabolism, by problems with sugar processing, which makes complete sense considering the brain is using the vast majority of sugar, 60% or so, that's in the blood. So blood sugar, insulin, second point in our triangle. Got a couple more things to say. I'll tell you about some nutritional supplements that you can use to protect yourself from blood sugar problems and to wean yourself off of blood sugar, wean yourself off of sugar and carbohydrates if you're so inclined to be addicted to that stuff, which many of us are. Protein definitely is the number one way to do it. Upping your protein, whey protein, and I'd be just doing a lot. I know I've heard all the downside of protein. I've been reading about it for years. Guys like Dr. McDougall and the China study and blah, blah, blah. And whenever they do these things on protein, by the way, and they find how terrible protein is and how you don't need that much protein, they do them with, they always run their tests on animal studies, I shouldn't say animal, on meat. They use meat as their marker for protein. And meat definitely there's an upside to eating meat. You know, our brains developed when we figured out how to eat meat. So there's certainly an upside to eating meat, but meat today is not quality protein, I'm sorry to say. Even if it's grass-fed organic, which is definitely the way to go if you're going to be eating meat, it's just problematic. Now, if you do it tartare or very, very lightly cooked, the problem is when you cook protein, you start to create these carcinogenic compounds. Now, in the old days when we were getting veggies and antioxidants, and we were cooking in a different fashion with vegetables, basically, and spices, you'd get these antioxidant properties. But today, that's not how we process our foods. It's not done the same way. So meat has become problematic. But if you want to talk about protein, talk about egg protein and talk about whey protein. Now, those two are stupendously valuable foods. Eggs, both particularly. The problem with whey that makes it maybe a touch less powerful or less valuable than egg, if it does, is the fact that it is a processed food, and processing is never good. Egg is because it's unprocessed. It's about as unprocessed as you can get, especially a raw egg. It doesn't get any more close to the life force than a raw egg in terms of food. That's just some super, super powerful nutrition, an egg. All right. So we'll continue talking about blood sugar, and then we'll go to the third point of our triangle, and then we'll continue talking about electricity, which is really what I wanted to talk about before we took this digression. The electricity train that runs through the body that's pulled by oxygen on rails that we call the mighty 90 and plant nutrients.